Focus. Ideate. Innovate. Enable.
The Indian economy is facing an arduous journey to recovery in the wake of the COVID pandemic, with the total cases crossing 3 million. As per the latest GDP figures, the Indian economy contracted by almost 24% in the most drastic fall seen in decades, as the lockdown restrictions meant to contain the spread of the virus had a telling impact on business and consumption patterns. In these challenging times, entrepreneurs and big businesses are thinking innovatively to stay abreast of changing business dynamics and evolving consumer trends. What will the business landscape look like in the near term? Is there a future for offline stores in the time of social distancing and heightened health and safety awareness? Is direct-to-consumer the new business model gaining prominence? And how will it impact the supply chain? Can smart technology help geographically distant workforces perform more efficiently? And how are companies keeping up employee morale as work from home becomes a new reality? I'm Shereen Bhan, and joining me on this special show, The Blueprint, Business in the New Normal, to discuss the impact of rapidly changing consumer preferences on business models, as well as talent management in the new normal, are Falguni Nair, the founder and CEO of Nykaa; Deepak Iyer, the managing director of Mondelez India Foods; Mohit Malhotra, the CEO of Dabur India; and Harsh Razdan, the partner and head consumer markets and e-commerce at KPMG India. Falguni, gentlemen, many thanks for joining us. Harsh, let me ask you, there's been a lot that's been made of this so-called new normal. Everyone is trying to navigate their way through this uncertainty, but there are some trends that have emerged. What do you believe are likely to be the structural changes or the structural shifts that we see, especially in the consumer market, post this COVID cocooning? That's the term that Sanjeev Mehta of HUL used with me on my show a few days ago. Post-COVID cocooning, what do you believe are likely to be the structural shifts?
We launched our consumer survey in the month of August, covering 25 plus cities and about 2,500 consumers. There are a very interesting set of trends that came around. 78% of the respondents said they were going to reduce their discretionary spend, and of which 40% said they're going to do it only because they believe there's economic uncertainty. So I think that's going to play upon people's mind. Apart from this, about 30% said that's going to be because of fear of COVID. So now, while this is being kept in mind, there's also about 50% of our respondents said, COVID is not going to be long. It's going to be about 6 months at maximum. Everything will get okay after. But this trend was very different from tier 1 to tier 2 cities. The tier 2 cities looked very, very optimistic and said, it's going to be easy. It'll be less than 6 months. Don't have to worry. The age groups, 20 to 30 age group, thought it's going to be a big opportunity for them post-COVID. But they were also very worried about the health and hygiene aspects and whether companies will react in the way in which they're expecting. Men and women responded differently. Women said that it's going to be key for them to get safety right. Men said, yes, safety is important, but you have to get the value proposition also going. In fact, categories, the way we've seen over the last few months have reacted very differently. We've seen huge upswings on indulgent products, ready to eat, appliances at home, small electronics, also apparently top way. So a lot is changing in this dynamic, and I think it'll continue to change, Shereen.
Yes, several trends that you've picked up on, from the ready-to-eat explosion that we've seen to the DIY trend that is gaining consumer preference at this point in time. As they say, necessity leads to adaptability, and that's what's panning out in the market. But Deepak, let me come to you now. What we saw through the COVID lockdown has been pantry stocking, with people, because of the uncertainty and the fear, going out there and picking up any biscuit off the shelf. And many of you have been beneficiaries of that. But how much do you believe that this is going to stabilize or normalize now that we're in the phase of unlock? And what are some of the other specific consumer insights that you're picking up on?
As you see, the mobility index going outside, if you track the Google mobility index, is going up day by day, which means people are spending more time outside. And hence, all the categories which actually knock on out-of-home impulse, for example, our category chocolates is 50% in-home, 50% out-of-home. So we are seeing a big uptick in chocolate in the last 2 months as people are started moving out. So our in-home consumption is always stable, but so it's a bit of, by category, location of where do you consume the category. So a bit of mix of all of that.
Absolutely. In times of uncertainty, you will naturally see consumers veering towards brands that they trust. And that was one of the trends that you're picking up on, Deepak. And of course, you're a beneficiary of that as well. But Mohit, how much Chyawanprash have you been able to produce through these last few months? Because I know that that is certainly something that's flying off the shelves. But do you really believe that this health and wellness explosion across different categories within this segment, this is likely to stay? Is this here for good?
So I'm saying health and wellness trend is actually peaked in India at this point in time. When I'm saying peaking from the low levels that it was. If you compare India as compared to more Western economies like the US and the UK, health supplement penetration in this country is in the range of not even 2%. And Chyawanprash penetration is around 4%. It's abysmally low. If I have to compare to any health supplement in the US, it will be in the range of 40%. So the kind of headroom that India has to grow is humongous. So my Chyawanprash sales have gone up 7x to what it was pre-COVID levels. So even if it stays at 7x, the penetration goes up from 4% to at best around 6% levels.
Falguni, let me ask you, because, one thing that is absolutely clear, any category, any business, any segment that you look at is the explosion of e-commerce. I mean, every single company that we've spoken to has talked about how they've grown 10 times on the e-commerce route through this lockdown period, largely on account of necessity. But what are some of the trends that you're picking up, Falguni? And do you believe that this shift that we've seen, the consumer preference to move towards e-commerce, is now irreversible?
Absolutely. So I think what we saw was that from the beginning, a role of e-commerce to meet with supply chain challenges of delivering goods throughout the length and breadth of the country was recognized. And we saw that the government ensured that at least for essential category, we came in and we supplied throughout the lockdown. So we saw a big uptick in essential category, which in our case includes skincare, hair care, and personal care. And that really saw a very strong demand growth. Also, a lot of customers who used to be like young millennials always bought online, but many other older consumers who were skeptic are now enjoying buying online and believing in it more. So the cost of customer acquisition is really coming down because many customers are convinced about buying online.
Categories like makeup, etc., which saw hit during the lockdown phase, now that's starting to pick up as well. But Harsh, let me come back to you now, and let's talk about what you expect to see change on the back end. A lot of companies, and we have to say that the FMCG companies were perhaps the most resilient when it comes to being able to fulfill the consumers' demands. Yes, there was rationalization of SKUs, there was changes as far as logistics management was concerned. But on the back end, what are the sort of changes that you believe we're now going to see companies moving towards permanently in light of the experience and the learnings from COVID?
One of the big things which I'm beginning to see is about companies becoming fit for purpose and fit for the future. Now, what that means is you had COVID as a wake-up jolt. You're trying to now optimize your costs, ensure that you look at every possible cost, look at automation for functions in the backend, and try and ensure you're lean enough that when you come out of COVID, you're much fitter. I think that's one big trend which will continue to stay, and it's a wake up or a jolt to consumer companies. The second big one is around de-risking of supply chain. In the past, it was all about just in time, be lean. Now it's about what if scenario. What if, let's say, a particular geography shuts down and you have a factory there? In the past, it was all about get the right value. Even if you get from China, it's fine. Now people are talking about China +1. So huge, I think, pressure on de-risking the supply chain, working out what if scenarios. The third trend, which I have seen, is around cyber security, primarily impacting the infrastructure of clients. And I always say there are only two types of clients in the world. One client who says they've been cyber attacked. The other type of client who doesn't even know they've been cyber attacked. And I think that's up to us to awaken.
Yes, that cost management is certainly going to be one aspect that every company is going to look at. Line items will be examined. But let me bring Deepak into the conversation. Deepak, just to pick up on what Harsh was talking about, and let me ask you specifically to talk us through what you've been able to do in terms of de-risking the supply chain. So changes on the supply chain side, changes on distribution management, inventory management, do you believe that there is a significant shift that this has brought on?
So somewhere it is now no longer going to be a hand-to-mouth capacity planning. I think you need to be responsible. You need to have a manufacturing and allied services in the supply chain which are responsive, which are flexible, which are agile, and hence how do you see, the biggest challenge was how do you move stocks. So if there is a way you can move your product closer to the market, you are eliminating so many risks in the supply chain that you have.
Mohit, let me ask you that. Are we likely to see a significant increase in the investments that you make on the tech side of the business to enhance the kind of capabilities that Deepak was just talking about? What have you, for instance, specifically done? What do you intend to do?
Our capital expenditure has really gone up in terms of robotization and putting in technology. Like technology is now intervening and enabling every element of value chain in the entire organization. So if I look at SAP upgradations are happening, it's moving to more batch processing, to real-time processing. If you look at a distributor management systems are getting upgraded. The handheld terminals on which the salesman is actually taking the orders, that is becoming completely automated. The suggested orders which is actually coming in. The stockists are setting up call centers within the premises because during COVID they could not reach out. So there's a call center, a mini call center set up at the stockist end, and that is feeding into the invoicing system. Now in the assembly line in the factory, if there are 4 people which are picking and placing a case, now that is getting replaced by a robot there. Yeah. So the robotics are actually replacing it.
Yes, so more capital expenditure as far as technology is concerned. But Falguni, just give me a sense of the kind of numbers that you've seen on Nykaa, the growth and what you believe the trajectory is likely to be given where you find yourself today and the kind of explosion that we've seen in this market. What kind of investments are you going to be making now to bolster capacity?
I think for us, in July itself, we saw our numbers were 60% higher than February, which was the last, what we called as business as usual month. So we saw a huge, between April and May, we were slightly below business as usual, but by June, we were catching up with that. And in July, we saw a huge growth. So we do believe that e-commerce is going to see a lot of growth. And that is also coming from a lot of initiatives we put in place. So for example, personalization has been a big initiative where depending on the zip codes, we show customers the relevant products that they can buy. Similarly, we were omnichannel and we had more than 70 stores, and we connected all the store inventory and made it available to our e-commerce customers through what we call it hyperlocal. And we activated hyperlocal, and just like Deepak said, it was very agile execution by us, where over a period of 3 days, we converted our store both into personalized store as well as we activated hyperlocal. So our engineers, technology team worked overnight and made that happen, and that allowed us to continue to build. We are investing in our technology team, which will actually double, I would say, over next 1 year. And because technology remains our key strength. So I think the growth is amazing, and we will also have to invest in warehouse capacity as well as technology development.
This business of whether work from home is going to be the new normal, is it here to stay? Are we going to have more distributed workforces, more flexible workforces? What are the trends that you're picking up from people that you speak to in terms of talent management?
Shereen, very interesting question. In fact, I would segment it into 2 parts. If you look at talent, which is on the field, sales force, blue collar employees, I think most of the people know what is to be done, whether it's social distancing, it's PPE kits, etc. The challenge is to get it done. It's very difficult with the kind of distributed workforce we have. I think solutions are clear, but difficult to do. The bigger question is with the workforce not being able to go to office, how do you keep them engaged at home? What do you do to ensure that it's a safe working environment? What do you do when you have a lot of noise at home? Everyone doesn't have a clean room to be able to sort of have calls, etc. They may not have a desk at home. At times, I'm hearing clients saying we are helping them with loan for furniture. We are helping them with internet-based allowances and things like that. So I think we'll have to keep them engaged. It's going to be a very difficult one, but not a very easy one for us to address, because those kind of employees are used to coming to office and talking to each other, and it'll be a different feel as of now.
Yes, you're right about that. Deepak, how do you see this changing? I mean, I, for one, refuse to believe that this is going to be the new normal. I do think that people do want to engage with each other, but they, of course, also want flexibility. And more importantly, you know, from a sales and distribution perspective or a manufacturing perspective, there is only so much social distancing that's possible. So how do you see talent management going forward?
We need to be a little conscious here because there are two, three factors we need to balance. First, of course, is cost. So hence, you know, if you knock off an office, it's good for your balance, for your P&L. But equally, let's assume for a minute you have an office in Bombay, and we know the size of homes in Bombay. And if it's a dual income household and there are kids who are schooling, imagine in a one-bedroom household, if you're going to have 2, 3, 4 screens, 2 schooling and 2 working, is not necessarily going to be so effective. So we need to be very conscious about the effectiveness of working from home. And there's this word that Satya Nadella used. You know, I think it's a wonderful word. He said we are living off the social capital that we created in the one-on-one relationships we built over several years, right? So let's do a fast forward, saying that from now, nobody comes to office. 10 years from now, people who joined this year, next year, the year after that, don't even know who are the people they're working with. So how are you going to run collaborations? How are you going to work in teams, right? So this whole thing about, you know, living off a social capital, balancing it with effectiveness, and of course the cost angle, I think they should go in tandem, and this will differ by the kind of industry you are in. So if the nature of your business is about offering services or products like BFSI or in travel tourism, you could possibly do a lot of it working from home. But if it's about the physicality of a job, let's say tasting the chocolate, how do you do it from home?
I think you make a very good point to take forward what Satya Nadella says on social capital. But Mohit, let me ask you about how you see how you're going to be addressing this in the future. And also, more importantly, on the retail front, there's been a lot of, you know, conversation that we just, for instance, had on e-commerce. A lot of people are saying hybrid is going to be the new way to go. Phygital is the new way to go. You know, how are you seeing at the front end as well, on the retail side, the model evolving?
Dabur, which is a 135 years old organization, we could never think of operating in an environment which is more distant. But COVID has actually forced us to go distant, and productivity has actually gone up by 50-60%. A new product that used to take around 1.5 years for us to launch, now we are rolling it out in like 3 months. Because the trust, the transparency, the number of layers have got reduced in the organization. There is no clock watching, which has actually happened, and the productivity has gone up drastically. So while to Deepak's point, there will be some functions who will actually have to come and work, like R&D will have to come, they'll have to make the formulations. But there is no need of workstations now. They are virtual workstations, and people can collaborate for 8 hours together, whether not getting tired at all, not coming to office. Productivity is really shot up, at least for us in Dabur. That's why you saw a slew of launches coming in from a company during the COVID time. So I really find that this is a very interesting and encouraging change, and which should only last. Now I'll come to the second part of your question, which is all about a retail front end. I think that is also undergoing a complete transformation to the e-commerce point, which is this commerce technology. What would have happened 10 years hence has actually happened now. For us, from 1% e-commerce contribution is jumped up to 6% e-commerce contribution. So that is like real step jump, which is actually leapfrogged because of the COVID situation. A rural connect for us is actually again gone up. Seamless payments are being received. Earlier, we used to work with the stockists, used to take check leaves from them as a sort of a promissory note, you know, in case somebody defaults, we can use that check leaves and we can go to the bank. Now everything is changed. Now it's all electronic payment transfers, which has happened because of COVID, because nobody could give check leaves during COVID. So that technology enablement has happened. Our contribution of direct sales of the company to the end consumer has actually gone up. So our websites have actually become e-commerce sites now. We are reaching out directly to consumers through immunity at doorstep programs, running immunity vans, and we are bypassing three intermediaries in between, whether it's a stockist or it's a wholesaler or a retailer. Can you imagine? Three intermediaries getting bypassed and you are going directly to the consumer. The cost to consumer acquisition has got reduced drastically.
Okay, Falguni, let me ask you then, what do you believe are likely to be the changes? And more importantly, what could these changes mean as far as costs are concerned? And of course, we've talked about the efficiency aspect of it. Productivity gains is something that that everybody talked about as well. But what will it mean in terms of a structural shift in terms of costs if indeed we are going to see these changes that we just spoke of?
I think for e-commerce companies, due to greater acceptance of buying online, we've clearly seen that the AOVs have gone up, the percentage prepaid has gone up, and also, cost of customer acquisition has come down. And these are all very positive gains towards the profitability of the e-commerce companies. So I think that is, and many of those are here to stay, because through June and July, we've seen that while some amount of COD is coming back, but overall the gains are there to stay. So that's been very good for e-commerce profitability. But coming in a little bit on physical retail, for beauty at least, I do believe that while consumers can buy it online most of the time, and that's what Nykaa's believed in and built such a large e-commerce platform for beauty, I also do feel that once in a while they want to come into the store to experience the products. And that is the experience that now we're trying to create digitally through virtual reality, artificial intelligence, personalized recommendation, and a whole host of education using digital mediums.
Yes, Harsh, I'll give you the final closing comments on this. Just to pick up where Falguni left off, and I think you mentioned it as well, focus much more on the value proposition. And this has always been a value-conscious market, and we're always dealing with value-conscious consumers. But what is that necessarily going to mean, given all of these changes that we've just spoken of?
So I think value is going to be key. You've said it very correctly. Value, it would be around convenience. And I think Mohit also mentioned in the different ways in which consumers or our customers are looking at convenience. I think the third thing would be about ranges of products or the kind of range that you have. Falguni has been talking about the kind of products you personalize. I don't think we'll have the same kind of ranges that we had in the past. It'll be very personalized kind of ranges. I think these three would be critical areas. I think obviously underpinned by things like safety, purpose, experience. These are things even Deepak mentioned at the beginning of this interaction. But I think those things will be hygiene. If you don't have them for a longer term, I think you will sort of have your challenges.
All right, gentlemen and Falguni, we will have to see how much of this is going to be irreversible and structural in nature. But many of the issues that we spoke of, I do believe, will navigate decisions that companies make to be fit for the future, to pick up on what Harsh had spoken of. Falguni, Mohit, Deepak and Harsh, many thanks for joining us here on this special conversation. We wish you all the very best of luck and appreciate your time here on CNBC TV 18.